The old shoebox lay forgotten in our garage, buried beneath years of accumulated memories and dust. I never imagined that its contents would shatter the foundation of my marriage and force me to question everything I thought I knew about Tom, my husband of 15 years. My hands trembled as I held the small SIM card, discovered among receipts and old photographs, its plastic surface worn but intact. Something about it felt wrong, like a discordant note in an otherwise perfect symphony. I still remember that morning with painful clarity. The autumn sun painted golden streaks across our kitchen counter as I prepared breakfast for our twins, Emily and Michael, while Tom rushed through his morning routine. He was the picture of suburban success, perfectly pressed suit, confident smile, and that easy charm that had won me over at the hospital fundraiser where we first met. The PTA meetings, the neighborhood barbecues, the shared carpools, we were that couple everyone looked up to, the ones who seemed to have it all figured out. "Dad, can you make it to my science fair next Thursday?" Michael asked, his voice carrying that hint of hope that always made Tom pause, no matter how busy he was. Tom ruffled our son's hair, promising he wouldn't miss it for the world. Emily chimed in about her upcoming soccer game, and Tom assured her he'd be there too, front and center with his camera ready. I watched him with our children, seeing the father I'd fallen in love with all over again. The way he listened intently to their stories, offered guidance with patience, and always made time for family dinner, these were the moments that defined our life together. Or so I thought. The SIM card sat heavy in my pocket throughout the day, like a ticking bomb waiting to explode. I tried to focus on my work at the real estate office, showing houses to eager young couples starting their own dreams of perfect families. But my mind kept drifting back to that small piece of plastic, wondering why Tom would keep an old SIM card hidden away. That evening, after the kids were asleep, I sat in our home office, my hands steady despite the storm brewing inside. The card reader hummed to life, and suddenly, my screen filled with images I never expected to see. A woman, beautiful in an effortless way, holding a young boy who couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. The resemblance to Tom was unmistakable, the same crooked smile, the same dimple in the left cheek. My stomach lurched as I scrolled through more photos, each one a dagger to my heart. The timestamps told their own story, these weren't ancient history, but recent memories, captured over the past year. The boy at a baseball game, the woman and Tom together at what looked like a school event, casual moments that spoke of familiarity and comfort. The kind of comfort that comes from shared history, from secrets kept in the shadows. I heard Tom's key in the front door, his familiar footsteps in the hallway. The sound that once brought comfort now filled me with dread. He called out my name, his voice carrying up the stairs, but I couldn't respond. My throat had closed up, choked with questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. "Jessica." He appeared in the doorway, his smile fading as he saw my face, then the images on the screen. The color drained from his features, and in that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before, fear. "Who are they, Tom?" My voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of 15 years of trust now hanging by a thread. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The soft click felt like a gunshot in the silence. "Jess, I can explain," he began, but I cut him off. "Explain what?" "That you have another family. That everything we've built together is a lie." The words tasted bitter in my mouth. Tom sank into the chair across from me, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "It's not what you think," he said, but his eyes told a different story. "The boy, he's my son. But I only found out about him recently. I swear to you, Jessica, I never knew until last year." The room seemed to spin around me as I processed his words. A son. Another child who shared Tom's blood, who had his smile, who had been hidden from our family like a shameful secret. But it wasn't the existence of the child that broke my heart, it was the realization that Tom had chosen to keep this from me, had built a separate life behind my back. "How long have you been seeing them?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm despite the earthquake happening inside me. I started visiting Jake about 8 months ago, Tom admitted. His mother, Sarah, she reached out to me through a mutual friend. She said Jake needed his father in his life. The casual mention of their names, Jake, Sarah, felt like another betrayal. These weren't just anonymous figures in photographs anymore. They were real people who had carved out a space in my husband's life, a space I knew nothing about. As the night wore on and Tom's explanations tumbled out, I sat there, watching the man I thought I knew transform into a stranger before my eyes. Every word he spoke seemed to dig the hole deeper, revealing layers of deception I never thought him capable of. The worst part wasn't the existence of his other son, it was the realization that he'd chosen to face this alone, had deemed me unworthy of sharing this burden. Tomorrow, I would have to wake up and face our children, maintain the facade of normalcy at breakfast, and somehow find the strength to navigate this new reality. But tonight, as I sat in our darkened office with the evidence of Tom's secret life glowing on the screen before me, I felt something shift inside me. The Jessica who trusted blindly, who believed in perfect families and happily ever afters, was disappearing. In her place, a new woman was emerging, one who demanded answers, who wouldn't settle for comfortable lies, who was ready to fight for her place in this suddenly crowded narrative. The morning light felt like an accusation, harsh and unforgiving as it streamed through our bedroom windows. I hadn't slept, my mind a carousel of images, the boy's dimpled smile, Tom's guilty eyes, the weight of 15 years of marriage suddenly balanced on the edge of a precipice. The sounds of our children stirring downstairs anchored me to a reality I wasn't ready to face. Tom had spent the night in the guest room, his absence beside me a physical ache I refused to acknowledge. The space between us felt like an ocean now, vast and treacherous, filled with the debris of unspoken truths and half-formed accusations. I listened to him moving around downstairs, maintaining the choreography of our normal morning routine. The familiar sounds of breakfast preparation, the gentle murmur of his voice with the twins, it all felt like a perfectly rehearsed play where I could no longer remember my lines. I met her at a medical conference in Chicago, Tom had confessed last night, his words hanging in the air between us like smoke. It was 8 years ago, Jessica. One weekend. I never meant for it to happen, and I never knew about Jake until last year. The precision of his timeline carved new wounds into my heart. 8 years ago, when I was pregnant with the twins, my body swollen with our future, my mind filled with dreams of our perfect family. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. While I had been creating life, he had been creating secrets. While I had been nurturing our family, he had planted the seeds of its potential destruction. The betrayal wasn't just in the act itself, but in the years of silence that followed, in the casual way he had carried this burden alone, denying me the choice to face it together. I forced myself through the motions of getting ready, each gesture a conscious effort. The woman in the mirror looked foreign to me, her eyes harder, her mouth set in a line that spoke of determination rather than defeat. The jewelry box on my dresser caught my attention, and I deliberately chose the sapphire earrings Tom had given me for our 10th anniversary. They felt like armor now, a reminder of the life I had earned, the family I had built. Downstairs, the scene that greeted me was a masterclass in suburban normalcy. Emily and Michael sat at the kitchen island, arguing good-naturedly over the last chocolate chip muffin. Tom stood at the stove, making his signature weekend pancakes, his back too straight, his movements too careful. The facade was perfect, but I could see the cracks now, the careful way he avoided my eyes, the slight tremor in his hands as he flipped the pancakes. "Mom!" Emily's face lit up. "Dad's making funny faces in the pancakes again." The innocence in her voice nearly broke me. Our children sat there, blissfully unaware that their world was shifting on its axis, that their father's heart was divided in ways we were only beginning to understand. I played my part, smiling and kissing their foreheads, breathing in the familiar scent of their shampoo. But beneath the surface, my mind was racing, calculating, planning. The reality of another child, a son who shared Tom's blood, who had his smile, wasn't just an emotional blow. It was a complexity that would ripple through every aspect of our lives. "We need to talk," I told Tom quietly as the kids finished breakfast. "Really talk. About everything." The words carried the weight of ultimatum, of decisions that couldn't be undone. He nodded, his face a mask of resignation and relief. "I'll ask Sarah to meet with us," he said, and the casual familiarity with which he spoke her name sent a fresh wave of pain through my chest. "You deserve to understand everything, Jess. To know who Jake is, what this means for our family." The mention of family, our family, sparked something fierce inside me. "Our family," I repeated, my voice low enough that the kids couldn't hear. "The one you risked. The one you lied to. That family, Tom." His flinch was satisfying in a way that surprised me. I had never been cruel, had prided myself on being the diplomatic one, the peacemaker. But something had shifted inside me, a fundamental realignment of priorities. The woman who had spent 15 years supporting Tom's dreams, smoothing his path, making excuses for his absences at school events and family dinners, she was gone. Later that morning, after Tom had taken the twins to their weekend activities, I sat in our home office again, staring at the photos I had discovered. The boy, Jake, had Tom's eyes, the same warm brown that I fell in love with, that I saw every day in our children's faces. But there was something else in his expression, a hesitancy that spoke of uncertainty, of a child trying to find his place in a world that had suddenly expanded to include a father he never knew he had. I opened my laptop and began to research. Child support laws, custody agreements, the legal implications of undisclosed paternity. Each click, each article I read, felt like another brick in a wall I was building, not to keep Tom out, but to protect what was mine. Knowledge was power, and I had spent too long in the dark. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Sarah agreed to meet tomorrow. Just the three of us. We can talk about everything." The message sat there, a digital representation of how thoroughly my life had derailed. Tomorrow, I would sit across from the woman who had shared a piece of my husband I never knew existed. I would look into the face of someone who had the power to reshape my family's future. But as I sat there, surrounded by the evidence of Tom's past choices and their present consequences, I felt a strange sense of clarity emerging from the chaos. This wasn't just about Tom's betrayal or the existence of another child. This was about power, who held it, who wielded it, and who had the strength to reshape the narrative. Tomorrow would be the first chapter in a story I intended to control. The cafe Tom chose for our meeting sat on the edge of town, far enough from our usual haunts to avoid prying eyes. I arrived 20 minutes early, claiming a corner table that gave me a clear view of the entrance. Each minute that ticked by felt like another weight added to the burden of anticipation crushing my chest. I watched my reflection in the window, searching for traces of the woman I had been just days ago, the confident wife, the dedicated mother, the pillar of suburban stability. She was gone, replaced by someone whose eyes held a sharp edge of calculation beneath their surface pain. The bell above the door chimed, and they entered together. The sight of Tom and Sarah walking side by side sent a wave of nausea through me so intense I had to grip the edge of the table. They moved with an unconscious familiarity that spoke of shared history, not lovers, perhaps, but something equally intimate, co-conspirators in a narrative that had excluded me until now. Sarah was everything I had imagined and nothing like I expected. Tall and graceful, with an artist's hands and eyes that held both apprehension and defiance. She wore no makeup, her natural beauty a stark contrast to my carefully applied armor of cosmetics. The casual elegance of her oversized sweater and worn jeans seemed to mock my deliberately chosen power suit. "Jessica." Tom's voice carried a note of desperate hope, as if he could somehow bridge the chasm between us with just my name. "Thank you for agreeing to this." I didn't respond, keeping my gaze fixed on Sarah as she slid into the seat across from me. The moment stretched between us, taut with unspoken accusations and unnamed fears. I had rehearsed this meeting countless times in my mind, imagined every possible scenario, from righteous anger to cold dismissal. But sitting here, face to face with the woman who held a piece of my husband's past and future, I felt something unexpected: curiosity. "Tell me about Jake," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Tell me about my husband's son." Sarah's eyes widened slightly at my directness, but she met my gaze without flinching. "He's a remarkable boy," she began, her voice soft but clear. "Sensitive, intelligent. He loves baseball and science fiction, just like his father. He has trouble sleeping during thunderstorms, and he can't eat scrambled eggs without ketchup." Each detail was a precise incision, cutting away at the distance I had tried to maintain. Tom sat between us, his presence both essential and irrelevant. I watched him watching Sarah as she spoke about Jake, saw the pride and pain mingled in his expression. It was a look I had seen countless times when he talked about our twins, and its familiarity in this context felt like betrayal all over again. "When did you decide to contact Tom?" The question had burned in my throat since that first night of discovery. "Why now, after 8 years?" Sarah's fingers traced patterns on the table's surface, a nervous gesture that humanized her in a way I resented. "Jake was diagnosed with a rare blood disorder last year," she said quietly. "Nothing immediately life-threatening, but it made me think about his future, about his right to know his father. I never planned to disrupt your life, Jessica. I couldn't bear the thought of Jake facing his challenges without knowing half of who he is." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. A sick child. A mother's desperate attempt to secure support and connection for her son. The narrative I had constructed of malicious intent and calculated disruption began to crumble at the edges. "And you," I turned to Tom, my voice carrying an edge that made him wince. "You decided to handle this alone. To build a relationship with your son in secret, to attend his games, to become part of his life without ever giving me the chance to understand or accept or help." "I was a coward," Tom admitted, his voice raw. "I told myself I was protecting everyone, you, the twins, Jake. But really, I was protecting myself. From your judgment, from the consequences of my past, from having to face the full weight of what I'd done." The truth of his words hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. Sarah reached into her bag, pulling out a manila envelope. "These are Jake's medical records, school reports, everything you might want to know." She slid them across the table. "I want you to understand, Jessica, that I never intended to threaten your marriage. But Jake, he lights up when Tom visits. For the first time in his life, he has a father who shows up, who cares, who wants to be part of his world." I stared at the envelope, seeing it not just as a collection of documents but as a bridge between two worlds that had collided with devastating force. Inside were the details of a life that was inextricably linked to mine now, whether I wanted it or not. "Does he know about us?" I asked. "About Emily and Michael?" "He knows Tom has other children," Sarah replied carefully. "But we've been waiting for the right time, the right way to introduce everyone. We wanted to be sure." "Sure of what?" My laugh held no humor. "Sure that I wouldn't completely fall apart when I discovered my husband's secret family. Sure that I would be reasonable and understanding about being kept in the dark." The bitterness in my voice made both of them flinch, but I couldn't stop the words from pouring out. "Do you have any idea what it's like to discover that your entire life is built on shifting sand? That the man you trust most in the world has been living a double life, making decisions that affect your entire family without even giving you the courtesy of a choice?" Tom reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled away. "Jess, please. I know I handled this all wrong. But Jake needs me, needs us. He's innocent in all of this." And there it was, the crux of the matter, the impossible equation I was being asked to solve. A sick child who needed his father. A husband who had betrayed my trust but was trying to do the right thing, albeit too late. A woman who had every right to seek support for her son but whose very existence threatened everything I held dear. I stood up, gathering my purse and the envelope with mechanical precision. "I need time," I said, my voice distant even to my own ears. "Time to process this, to decide what it means for our family. But understand this, from now on, everything happens on my terms. No more secrets, no more unilateral decisions. If we're going to find a way forward, it has to be with complete transparency." As I walked out of the cafe, I felt their eyes on my back, but I didn't turn around. The woman who had walked in, full of rage and pain, was already transforming into someone else. Someone who understood that power lay not in emotional outbursts or ultimatums, but in the quiet calculation of next moves, in the careful assessment of leverage and opportunity. The envelope in my hand held more than just information about a child I had never met. It held the key to understanding my new reality, and perhaps, to reshaping it on my own terms. The manila envelope sat on my desk like a live grenade, its contents threatening to detonate what remained of my carefully constructed world. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the study windows, casting long shadows across Jake's medical records, his school reports, the carefully documented evidence of a life that had grown parallel to my own, hidden in plain sight. Each page I turned revealed another thread in the tapestry of deception Tom had woven. Jake's blood disorder wasn't just a medical condition, it was a genetic predisposition inherited from Tom's side of the family. The same family medical history I had dutifully reported at every pediatrician visit with the twins, never knowing I was working with incomplete information. The revelation sent ice through my veins. How many other hereditary time bombs were ticking beneath the surface of our lives? My phone buzzed with another message from Megan, my closest friend and the only person I'd confided in about this nightmare. "Come over," she urged. "You shouldn't be alone with those thoughts." But solitude had become my armor, my laboratory where I could dissect each new piece of information without the distraction of others' sympathy or judgment. The house creaked around me, empty now that Tom had taken the twins to their weekend activities, another perfectly orchestrated performance of normalcy. In the silence, I could hear the echoes of 1,000 little moments that now held different meaning. All those late meetings, those weekend conferences, those sudden emergency consultations. How many had been legitimate, and how many had been carefully crafted opportunities to visit his other family? I pulled up the tracking app on my phone, the one I'd installed after discovering Tom's secret. It showed him exactly where he said he'd be, at the community center where Emily's soccer practice was held. The fact that he was being truthful now felt like another betrayal. Why couldn't he have chosen honesty when it mattered most? A new email notification flashed across my screen. From Sarah. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. The message was simple, almost elegant in its devastating impact. "Jake has been asking about meeting his siblings. I thought you should know before Tom brings it up." The words blurred before my eyes as rage surged through me, hot and clarifying. They were already planning the next step, orchestrating the gradual integration of our families as if I were merely a supporting character in their grand production. The presumption of it, the casual dismantling of the boundaries I tried to establish, ignited something dark and purposeful within me. I opened my laptop, fingers flying across the keys with savage precision. Years of working in real estate had taught me how to research, how to dig beneath surface appearances to find the truth that people tried to hide. Sarah's life began to unfold before me, her art gallery struggling to stay afloat, the second mortgage on her modest home, the medical bills that insurance wouldn't fully cover. Each detail was a weapon, a pressure point waiting to be exploited. The sound of my own laughter startled me, sharp and unfamiliar in the quiet room. I barely recognized the woman I had become, this creature of calculation and cold fury who could look at a single mother's financial struggles and see leverage instead of suffering. But then, I barely recognized anything about my life anymore. My phone rang, Tom's ringtone, once a source of comfort, now a jarring intrusion. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what he would say. He would tell me about Jake's desire to meet his siblings, would try to present it as a natural progression, an inevitability we should embrace. He would use that gentle, reasonable tone that had once made me feel cherished but now revealed itself as the voice of manipulation. The sun had set while I worked, leaving me in the blue glow of my laptop screen. In the darkness, my reflection looked almost predatory, eyes bright with purpose, lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. I had spent days drowning in pain, in the suffocating weight of betrayal. But pain, I was discovering, could be transformed into something far more dangerous. A new message from Sarah appeared. I know this is difficult, but please consider what's best for all our children. Our children. The phrase sent a fresh wave of fury through me. I opened my browser to compose a reply, then stopped. Sarah didn't need to know that I had spent hours mapping out her vulnerabilities, calculating the precise pressure points that could bring her carefully balanced world crashing down. She didn't need to know that while she and Tom played their game of gentle persuasion, I was orchestrating a counter-strategy that would leave them both reeling. I reached for my phone, dialing a number I hadn't used in years. David? It's Jessica. Remember when you said you owed me a favor? I need everything you can find on a Sarah Mitchell. And I mean everything. David, my old college friend turned private investigator, didn't ask questions. He understood the language of revenge, of calculated retribution. As I hung up, I felt the last vestiges of my former self slipping away. The Jessica who believed in second chances, who prioritized harmony over justice, was gone. In her place stood someone harder, someone who understood that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to be willing to destroy what threatens it. The house remained quiet, but the silence no longer felt oppressive. It was the silence of potential energy, of a spring being compressed to its breaking point. Tom and Sarah thought they were writing this story, carefully managing the merger of their separate worlds. They had no idea that I was about to introduce a plot twist they never saw coming. David's report landed in my inbox at precisely 3:47 a.m., its arrival announced by the soft chime of my phone in the darkness. I sat in our home office, wrapped in the heavy silence of pre-dawn, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as I contemplated the weight of what I was about to uncover. The soft glow of my screen cast shadows across the family photos that lined the walls, frozen moments of happiness that now felt like elaborate props in a play I never knew I was performing. Sarah Mitchell's life unfolded before me in clinical detail, each revelation a new piece in the puzzle I was assembling. The gallery she ran was indeed struggling, hemorrhaging money despite its prestigious location. But it wasn't just the economy or changing art trends that were bleeding her dry. There were inconsistencies in the financial records, careful omissions that David's trained eye had spotted. Someone was siphoning funds, and the trail led straight to a private account in the Cayman Islands. The irony tasted like ash in my mouth. While Tom and I had scraped and saved for the twins' college fund, while I had agonized over every household budget, he had been quietly funneling money to support his secret family. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore, it had tangible weight, measurable in dollars and cents. But it was the other discoveries that made my hands tremble as I scrolled through the report. Sarah's pristine image as the struggling single mother began to crack under scrutiny. There were police reports, carefully buried but not destroyed, of domestic disturbances at her previous addresses. A restraining order filed by an ex-boyfriend who claimed she had become obsessive, threatening. Medical records that showed a pattern of emergency room visits with symptoms that suggested prescription drug abuse. The woman who had sat across from me in that cafe, radiating quiet dignity in maternal concern, suddenly seemed like a masterful performance artist. She had played me perfectly, leveraging my guilt and maternal instincts with the precision of a surgeon. Every hesitant smile, every carefully chosen word about Jake's need for his father, it was all part of a calculated strategy. My phone buzzed again, another message from Tom. "We need to talk about the children meeting." Jake's getting more insistent. The presumption in his tone, the casual way he tried to orchestrate this merger of our families, sent a fresh wave of rage through me. He still thought he was in control, that he could manage this situation with his usual charm and reasonable arguments. I opened my laptop and began to write, my fingers flying across the keys with cold precision. The letter to the state medical board practically wrote itself, detailed concerns about a doctor's judgment, about financial impropriety and possible prescription drug issues. Not an outright accusation, just enough carefully worded concerns to trigger an investigation. Tom's professional reputation, the career he had built with such dedication, balanced on a knife's edge. The second letter went to Sarah's gallery's board of directors, highlighting the financial discrepancies David had uncovered. Again, nothing directly accusatory, just the right combination of facts and insinuations to start an audit that would unravel her carefully constructed facade. As I worked, I felt myself splitting in two. One part of me watched in horror as I systematically laid the groundwork for destruction. The other part, the part born in the ashes of betrayal, felt a cold satisfaction in finally taking control of the narrative. They had rewritten my life without my consent, now I would return the favor. Dawn began to creep through the windows, painting the room in shades of gray. I heard the twins stirring upstairs, their innocent morning routine a stark contrast to the vengeance I had spent the night orchestrating. In a few hours, they would bounce down to breakfast, eager to share their dreams and plans for the day. They had no idea that their family stood on the brink of implosion, that their father's carefully hidden choices were about to unleash a tsunami of consequences. I closed my laptop and moved to the kitchen, beginning the familiar choreography of breakfast preparation. As I measured coffee grounds and heated the griddle for pancakes, my mind raced through contingency plans. The letters I had written were like loaded guns, once fired, there would be no taking back the damage they would cause. The sound of Tom's footsteps on the stairs made my spine stiffen. He appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted and uncertain. For a moment, I saw him as he must have looked 8 years ago in that Chicago hotel room, younger, more reckless, unaware that his choices would eventually bring us to this moment of reckoning. "Jess," he began, his voice carrying that note of practiced reasonableness that I had once found so comforting. "I think it's time we seriously discuss introducing the children. Jake deserves to know his siblings, and Emily and Michael have a right to know their brother." I turned to face him, my expression carefully neutral. The email sat in my drafts folder, waiting to be sent. The knowledge of what I was about to do filled me with a terrible power. "You're right," I said, watching confusion flash across his face at my apparent acquiescence. "It's time for everything to come out in the open. All of it." The twins thundered down the stairs, their voices filling the kitchen with morning chaos. I handed them their breakfast with practiced normalcy, kissed their foreheads, checked their backpacks. But beneath the surface, my mind was already racing ahead to the aftermath of what I had set in motion. By this time tomorrow, Tom's carefully constructed house of cards would begin to collapse. As I watched him interact with our children, I felt a moment of doubt. Was I becoming the very thing I despised, someone who could destroy lives with calculated precision? But then I remembered the photos on that SIM card, the secret bank accounts, the years of lies. Sometimes, I realized, the only way to reclaim your power is to be willing to burn everything to the ground and rise from the ashes. The letters I had crafted detonated with the precision of tactical strikes. Within 48 hours, Tom's carefully constructed world began to splinter and crack, each revelation striking like lightning against the facade of normalcy he had maintained for so long. The medical board's investigation notification arrived first, followed swiftly by the gallery audit announcement. I watched the color drain from his face as he read each message on his phone, his hands trembling with the realization that his carefully managed double life was unraveling. Sarah's desperate calls went straight to my voicemail, her messages growing increasingly frantic as the walls closed in around her. The gallery board's preliminary findings had already frozen her accounts. The whispers of financial impropriety spread through our small community like wildfire, each rumor adding fuel to the inferno I had methodically engineered. I sat in our kitchen, the morning sun painting everything in deceptively gentle hues, when Tom finally broke. "It was you," he said, his voice hollow with recognition. "You orchestrated all of this." He stood in the doorway, a ghost of the confident man who had once commanded every room he entered. The medical board's investigation had already forced him to take a leave of absence, his prestigious practice teetering on the edge of ruin. Did you think I would just accept it? My voice emerged calm, controlled, the voice of someone who had transcended pain and found something harder, more durable on the other side. That I would quietly step aside while you reconstructed our family to accommodate your lies. Jake is innocent in all this, he pleaded, desperation cracking through his composure. He's just a child who needs his father. And our children? I rose from my chair, feeling the weight of every betrayal fueling my words. What about their need for a father they could trust? For a family built on truth instead of convenient lies? The silence between us stretched taut with unspoken accusations. In that moment, I saw Tom clearly for the first time, not as the betrayer or the beloved husband, but as a man who had tried to hold two worlds together through sheer force of will and charm. Now those worlds were colliding, and he stood in the epicenter, watching everything crumble. I can fix this, he started, reaching for his phone. If I just explain to the board, to Sarah. There's nothing to fix, Tom. I moved to the window, watching our neighbors' children play in their yard, their laughter a stark counterpoint to the gravity in our kitchen. You don't understand, this isn't about revenge. This is about power. About taking back what you stole from me when you decided to build a life behind my back. The doorbell rang, its cheerful chime incongruous with the tension filling our home. Sarah stood on our porch, her composed facade cracking around the edges. The woman who had sat across from me in that cafe, radiating quiet confidence, now looked brittle enough to shatter at a touch. You've destroyed everything, she said as she pushed past me into the foyer. The gallery, Tom's practice, do you have any idea what this will do to Jake? I learned about consequences from the best teachers, I replied, watching her flinch at the ice in my voice. You and Tom wrote this ending the moment you decided to keep secrets that affected my family. Tom moved between us, his doctor's instinct to heal, to mediate, still strong despite everything. We can work this out, he began, but I cut him off with a laugh that held no humor. We're past working things out, I said, pulling an envelope from my desk drawer. These are my terms. Non-negotiable. I handed copies to both of them, watching their faces as they read through the carefully worded document my lawyer had prepared. The terms were clear, Tom would retain limited visitation rights with Jake, but all contact would be supervised and documented. Sarah would relocate her gallery, and herself, to another state, using the settlement I offered to restart somewhere else. Tom would transfer his practice to a colleague and accept a position at a smaller clinic in our town, effectively ending his ambitious career trajectory. This is insane, Sarah whispered, but her hands clutched the paper like a lifeline. You can't just reorganize our lives like this. Actually, I can. And I have. I moved to the mantel, running my fingers along the frame of our family photo, the last one taken before everything imploded. You both taught me an invaluable lesson about power. About how the person who controls the narrative controls everything. Tom sank into a chair, the fight draining from him as he reread the terms. And if we refuse? Then I let the investigations run their course. I released the evidence of financial misconduct, of prescription irregularities, of every carefully hidden skeleton in both your closets. My voice remained steady, almost gentle. Our children, all of them, deserve better than parents who build their lives on lies. The afternoon light slanted through our windows, casting long shadows across the room. In the distance, I could hear our twins returning from their friend's house, their voices carrying the innocent joy that I had fought so hard to protect. You have 24 hours to decide, I said, moving toward the door. Choose wisely. As they left, their shoulders bowed under the weight of their defeat, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a profound sense of clarity. The woman I had been when this began would never recognize the person I had become. But perhaps that was the point. Sometimes the only way to survive betrayal is to become someone strong enough to bear its weight, someone capable of reshaping reality itself. I walked upstairs to greet our children, their excited chatter about their day washing over me like a cleansing wave. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own battles. But for now, in this moment, I had reclaimed something precious, not just control over my narrative, but the power to protect what was mine, to define the terms of my own happiness. The setting sun painted our home in shades of amber and shadow, a fitting metaphor for the transformation that had taken place within its walls. Some would call it revenge, but I knew better. This was resurrection, the birth of a woman who understood that sometimes the greatest act of love is the willingness to burn everything down and rebuild from the ashes, stronger and wiser than before.